Eleazar ben Yair stood in the synagogue that was oriented towards Jerusalem according to the law, and there he listened to the melodious bass voice of Hillel, the priest chanting the Psalms of David. As many men as were free of their duties along the ramparts had crowded into the synagogue for the Sabbath service, and those who could not find a place waiting attentively outside were, like their women, they could at least hear the voice of Hillel and the responses. And though Eleazar ben Yair stood a head taller than most all the others, he was conspicuous more for his stance than height. He could have been on the deck of a rolling vessel, so wide were his feet spread, and he did not rock back and forth like all the others. He held his head high and appeared to be demanding some reply to his thoughts from beyond the walls of the synagogue, and his eyes further marked his separation from the multitude, because they were distant and preoccupied, and there was no sign of humility in them. He had been standing so for a long time, since the sun had gone down over the western hills of Judea, and the Roman torches far below had once again covered the desert like phosphorescent particles swimming a night sea. He fixed his great hands covertly, making fist after fist to soothe his impatience with the priest, whom he could only think of as a man who was still collecting shekels from the people of Masada to support a temple that no longer existed. Yet Eleazar sensed that it was imperative for him to be in the synagogue now, for the departure of Zidon and his relatives and Ezra had wrought great mischief among the people of Masada. Now those who remained could look down upon Zidon and Ezra and all the others and see that in spite of their confinement they were very much alive. Eleazar knew the temptation to join the defectors was powerful. After all, there might be at least some kind of future with the Romans, whereas here I must live ever more closely with my people, Eleazar had warned himself. I must breathe with them and touch them constantly. I must worship with them and believe with them, lest they cease to believe in me. So on this evening, he had forced himself to attend the synagogue. As earlier, he had accepted a ritual bath in the mikvah. The ancient code proclaimed how the purification of his body must be done, and Hillel and his fellow priest had gone to enormous trouble to preserve rainwater for nearly a year, so that the spirit of the law could be observed. Better, Eleazar thought secretly, the same effort should be devoted to thwarting the Romans' oncoming attack. Or would it be? Here, at least, was something his people could cling to in their desperation. Almighty God. He thought, how blessed are those who can believe so utterly. Drive the doubts from my mind and let me hide behind your strength. Let me believe like the Essenes, who will even forego defecating on this purest of days. Let me also rejoice that on this ancient occasion the priests are wearing their finest ceremonial garments, with breeches to cover their thighs, and long blue robes with ornamental golden bells, signifying thunder, and dangling pomegranates, which are supposed to make me think of lightning. Let me believe it is necessary for Hillel to adorn himself with an ephod, when he might better wear a breastplate in the same place, and let me marvel that his ephod is mostly of God and engraved with the names of the Jewish tribes. Give me some proof that silly thing on Hillel's head is more than a linen mitre encircled with a crown of gold. I can read the Hebrew symbols inscribed around the crown. Jehovah, does this childish display do you honor? or would you prefer that we who are the most recent arrivals on earth show more modesty?" Now Eleazar remembered how angry he had been when Hillel and his fellow priest had insisted on bringing all this paraphernalia with them across the desert, when they should all have been traveling fast and light. They had burdened themselves with scarves, mantles, chalices, incense burners, scrolls, and 8-branched candlesticks. Well, well, perhaps he had been wrong in his displeasure. Perhaps the blind faith of so many had its own usual value. As if to match his anxiety, he now heard Hillel intoning how it had been 1,556 years from the creation of Adam to the deluge, and another 892 years to the birth of Abraham, and then 525 years to the death of Moses, and it was 612 years from the Exodus to the building of the temple in Jerusalem. And though the temple was destroyed, Hillel was proclaiming it would be built again. So Eleazar at last decided, if these gaudy trinkets and fixed ways of my people have lasted for so long, if we are forever moaning about long-ago calamities, how am I going to make my people concentrate on the dangerous present? He raised his eyes and shook his head. Jehovah, you had better hand down a solution soon. His impatience continued to mount during the priest's prolonged recital, and he sighed so mightily a number of times several heads turned towards him in disapproval, and Alexis, who stood next to him, whispered, "Quiet! It can't last forever." "It already has. Pull at your beard, it will distract you." By the time Hillel had finished with the Mishnah, "There will be no hair left on my face." Through the western windows of the synagogue, Eleazar could see the constellation of Orion, and always he found comfort in seeing it hover above the black line of Judean mountains. "Greetings, Regal, Betelgeuse, and my affections to you, Castor and Pollux. You are all solace to my eyes." At last Hillel lifted his hands to his shoulders and gave the benediction. When he had finished, and the synagogue was nearly empty, Eleazar went to him and gave him grudging praise. "You do well to make me listen when my ears hear only the sounds of Romans building," he lied. Now, of course, he thought, here I have borne false witness to the high priest himself, but I must have advice and comfort against the dark new thoughts which stalk my mind. "Hillel," he said, "I have insulted God by making your place among us difficult. I am sorry, and hope you will forgive me." Judeans say Galileans hate the Torah. There are times when I wonder if they are not right, Hillel said coldly. Eleazar placed his huge hands on the priest's shoulders and shook him gently. And he was careful to smile when he said, "I know my ways are rough, Hillel. Oh, I know that, and fear it is too late in life to scrape the barnacles off my manners. But my heart is with you, even when my words may seem otherwise. It is difficult to keep God uppermost in the minds of our people when our leaders seem to dismiss him as unnecessary. I will mend my ways." Eleazar paused and dropped his hands to his side. Then he watched patiently while Hillel unwound the phylactery from his left arm 7 turns according to the law. Then he asked casually, "All of you priests are schooled in medicine. Is that not so, my friend?" "It is so." "Then perhaps you would reveal something that has long puzzled me. We will not see the kid in its mother's milk, nor eat any kind of carrion, because I am told the animals will have died in pain. Now I know how to kill, for I have had much practice at it, but I have never tried to kill a man or beast without causing pain. If you know how that may be done, will you, as a matter of interest, tell this ignorant fisherman the method is simple enough. You must be sure to employ a sharp knife. Then cut once quickly and surely across the jugular vein and carotid artery. Death will be painless. Are you planning to make your own sacrifice? No, Eleazar murmured. I was just wondering. He turned away without saying more to Hillel and walked thoughtfully toward his quarters. Be on your guard, he told himself. Allow some time to pass before you greet Miriam and Reuben, or they will sense the cloud which drapes so heavily across your spirits. For their sake, pretend the noise of the Romans building means no more than the surging of the sea. Now Regal had vanished behind the mountains, and Sirius also, and in his loneliness he thought it was like losing two friends. He forced himself to think of livelier matters, of a bracing winter day in what seemed like another life, when he had stood at the joining of the Jordan with the Dead Sea, and he remembered how he had been able to see the hot luxury of Jericho, and then look northward up the long valley to observe Mount Tabor crowned in snow. And he remembered how the thought of killing another man had not even ever entered his head. I have fought too long, he whispered to the stars, and then suddenly he remembered Abigail. Oh, my overburdened head, he thought. I have too long neglected the best friend I have on Masada. He half ran to the western casements, kicked off his sandals, and stooping low, entered a smoke-filled apartment no bigger than a box. A simple lamp flickered on the ground and hunched over. It was a woman of such frailty she seemed transparent. She was Abigail, daughter of that Hezekiah who had first taught Eleazar to number, the legendary Abigail who had fought the Romans since the first outbreaks at Caesarea.